In just over a week, 146,000 auto worker union members could walk off the job, costing the U.S. auto industry billions of dollars. Now, here's what they want: a 40% pay raise, a 32-hour work week, and traditional pensions restored. Their contract with GM, Ford, and Stellantis running out September 14th if a new deal is not reached. Joining us now to discuss is former NASDAQ and business reporter Krisha Lenzo, professor of business at Wayne State University, specializing in unions and labor disputes, Merrick Masters, and car dealership owner Tom Maoli. Thank you so much for joining us. Merrick, I'll start with you. You wrote an op-ed about this subject, and you've studied the history of UAW collective bargaining with the Detroit Three. So if this goes to strike, how significant is this?
Well, it would be extremely significant. It would have a hard impact on the employers. It would have a hard impact on the workers and on the communities, particularly in states like Michigan and Ohio and Indiana that are heavily dependent on the industry. And the ripple effect across the broader economy would be keen, because the multiplier effect of an auto strike is about 10. So for every auto worker that's produced directly by the auto industry, you have about 10 workers who are affected.
Yeah, it says that it could cost the economy about $5 billion a week. Tom, you own a car dealership. How would a strike impact your life, your business, if a deal isn't reached?
Well, listen, it's going to crush the auto dealers, but the reality of it is the UAW has to wake up and realize that we're living in a world where there's 8 to 10% inflation in the U.S., and they're asking for a 46% pay increase and a 32-hour work week, which equates to 20% cut. That is a total of 66% increase. It's unsustainable. And they want to look at the automakers' profits. You know, Ford made $1.9 billion last quarter, but they lost $1.1 billion in their EV division. And the government is forcing that. You know, if the government would step out of this whole process and let the river take its course with all this EV nonsense that they're trying to push on the consumer, maybe Ford could give some money back to the UAW and the workers. But the government's sucking the life out of the automakers with this EV agenda.
Yeah, Krisha, I mean, I'd like a 32-hour work week. So the big three automakers, so General Motors, Ford, and Stellantis, they say that the UAW requests are unrealistic. This, you know, as they compete with Tesla and lower wage foreign manufacturers. What's your take on all of this?
I would have to agree with Tom here. I think the requests are somewhat unrealistic given the pressure that these automakers are facing to turn to EVs. The results, if they, end up striking, will be dramatic for the economy, in that we've already seen supply chain issues with car parts and more. And in this case, we will have even bigger problems with maybe no cars to be had. I mean, cars are already so expensive. There's only one car right now, the Mitsubishi car. It's the only one that's $20,000. So Americans will ultimately struggle in terms of what they're able to afford. Many are defaulting on their car payments, among other things. So at this point in time, yes, it will really hurt the economy, billions of dollars, as you mentioned.
Yeah, those interest rates are so high on those loans and the leases. So UAW president also says in endorsement of Joe Biden, it's currently on hold, and that electric cars push could cost workers their jobs. Take a listen.
Our endorsements are going to be earned. And so, actions speak louder than words. There's a lot of work to be done still. But, naturally, all these things are a big part of it. Again, workers can't be left behind in this transition. When we talk about the EV transition, you're talking about 20% of the powertrain workers in the big three that stand to lose their jobs down the road.
Merrick, President Biden says he's the most pro-union president in history, but then we're hearing this. What do you think?
Well, I think it's important to go back to what the dealers said, in that they're being pushed to EV, and a lot of these workers are resistant to that because they know they're going to lose their job. And what they want is a voice at the table. I think it's important to remember that these are just initial positions that have come out with the parties. There is a deal that can be struck, particularly on wages. If the UAW is trying to get everything that it wants, then that's very unrealistic. But if they focus on wages, they can get a good significant increase. I think the companies are willing to give it to them.
Yeah, Tom, we keep hearing about this push for EV cars. The administration, they've been aiming for EV to make up about 60% of all new vehicle sales by 2030 to cut carbon emissions, but we know how expensive they are. Most people can't afford them. Talk to us a little bit about that and what that is doing to the car business.
Listen, it's driving the cost up. It's driving the cost of a lease and the finance up. The consumers are getting crushed today. And the reality of it is it's unsustainable, and there's no infrastructure in place, and the consumer's not buying into it. They're coming into the dealerships and they're still buying gas cars. You know, if you look at the auto dealers across the country, their lots are backed up now and you know, they're talking about how the inventories are growing. It's all on the EV side. It's not on the gas side. Consumers do not want to buy the EV. There's no infrastructure out there to charge it. They're worried about range and getting stuck on the side of the road. And along with the increased cost of purchasing an EV, you know, the consumer now has to go out and spend $5,000 and get an electrician in their house to put a charger in their garage. And most of them don't have that money. And, you know, the grid is not ready for this. This is an environmental push by President Biden. And the reality of it is he did it illegally. He did an end around. He went to the EPA and they mandated this law. And he didn't go through Congress and the Senate the way he was supposed to.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, there's not as many charging stations out there. And then I heard somebody said it took them an hour to charge their car. Who has that time? It's almost the technology is not keeping up with what the administration wants us to do. Chris Lenzo, Merrick Masters, Tom Maoli, we'll keep an eye on this. Thank you so much for joining us. Appreciate it.
Pleasure to be here.